Okay, hello students. I believe you've been enjoying the class from the starting point. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Equally, like, share, and leave your comment. So let's go to the next question. Can we have the next question? So this one says, write on any three narrative devices in the novel. And that we're talking about Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. So you just say, write on three narratives, not just three. And that three carry good mark, and that could be 10 marks if it's NECO. And why it is Waec, that is probably you divide it, equally to make 25. So the Waec is that 25 marks. So what you are going to do, you are going to write on those three. You take one, because we have several narrative techniques in the text. You can talk about irony. You write on irony very well. You write everything you know about irony. You write it. Then you take another one, probably first person narrative techniques. You also write it. Or if it's a third person, you also write it. And if you have another one, we're talking about the use of language, you also discuss it very well. It's in metaphoric language, the underline, or you talk about the symbol. There are several symbolism you can use there. You can mention as many as possible, but here you just say, just take anything. This one is very specific. So make sure you note it so that you don't waste your time writing jargons or nonsense. So you have to take just three out of several narrative techniques, just three. One, you take them one after the other. You can mention them, then later you begin to discuss them one after the other, moving from one thing, from one paragraph to the other. So if you do this, you score good marks. But if you just write a sentence or two or three, it may not earn you any mark at all. But for you to score excellent mark, you score B, you score A, you should be able to discuss extensively. Just three. You can take symbolism, you take irony, you take metaphoric language. So you write on them one after the other. Then you score good marks. Can we go to the next question? This one is poetry and drama. So you have African poetry. You also have non-African poetry. Let's look at one of the poem here. The question on African poetry, Let Me Die Alone by John K. Kagbo. How do men behave towards women in the play? This is African play, African drama, Let Me Die Alone. How do men behave towards women in the play? So before you can answer this one, you first of all look at some men, specific men, their behavior towards women. You can't just describe generally. So if you're writing generally and you are not referring to a particular character or some specific character, you will score a good mark. That's general. In fact, your mark will be low. But when you pick some particular, some specific men, and you begin to write their attitude, their behavior toward women, you take them one after the other, you should be able to take about three, or if you don't have that, two, just two men, their behavior toward women, either young or old, either their wives or their children, based on what you have read in the play, then you score good mark. But if you just take generally, this is where the men behave, and you are not referring to any character, you may not score any mark at all, or you may score a very low mark. But for you to score good marks, you should be able to take some refer to some specific characters, either men, such men, their behavior or their attitude towards women. You also mention those women, not general women, or not women in general. So you take them one after the other, and at least you should be able to write about three of them. And if they are not up to three in the play, whoever is a woman there, or whoever is a man there in the play, so you make sure you look at their relation, study it. You see one of the play you have read, ensure you read critically and you write critically at the same time. You can also express your own opinion about them. In fact, this one will require to make your own judgment, to make your own opinion, to score correct and excellent mark. Let's move on to the next question. Next question is discuss Banya as a remarkable character. This one is also a very straightforward question. Very, very straightforward. You just say discuss the character. Remarkable character. Something that is remarkable about him. So look at those things. How do you see Gaia? The characters around, how do they see Gaia? So look at them one after the other. Then discuss it. You must highlight some of these characters, some of these the visible traits, the trait of Gaia, either to the people, either to men, to women, to young, to the old, and generally his behavior, his traits within the play. So you highlight them. This is very straightforward. This one does not say discuss the character and role. This one only mentions the character, the weak point, the good point, the negative, the positive. You bring them out. Then your own, as a student of literature, you must be able to criticize. You must be able to make your own opinion. How do you see him? Apart from the character, the way the character see him, you should be able to make your own opinion known. You write it. And based on what you have read, you can express your opinion about Gaia. And when you do this, you score good mark. Not just writing a paragraph. You should write as many paragraphs as possible, as many pages as possible, based on what you have read about Gaia. So now let's move to the other African writer, which is Wole Soyinka, the lion and the jewel. So this is a common text to so many students. So the question there is how is the contest between tradition and modernity presented in the play? The contest between modernity. Before you can do it, you must be able to single out some characters. Who are those characters that represented tradition? You know them. Ballet is part of them. Baroka. You also look at Sidi as an example. And two of them, you can look at tradition from that angle. You also look at the angle from that of Sadiko, the wife of the ballet. So let's look at them the way they see tradition and what they represent there, what they are trying to present, what they are trying to bring out about tradition. Like Sidi now, he believes that you cannot get married to any man if the man does not pay your bride price. Some people call it, in some places they call it dowry. But here in the text, according to the text, it's the bride price. So Sidi said you cannot marry Lakule, the school teacher, who is representing modernism, the modernity we're talking about there. So he said, unless you pay my dowry, I love you, I can be your wife at any time, but you must do the traditional thing. So the main thing before you can marry me is to pay my bride price. Then there is another person that actually pay the bride price, but apart from that, to show that you represent tradition, you can look at all those things he did, the colano, the breaking of colano, the palm wine, giving out so many things. So that's Baroka, who also symbolized tradition. And at the end of the day, he was the one who actually paid the bride price of CD to show that he's in support of tradition. And let's look at Lakunle on the other hand, who is representing modernity or modernism. So Lakunle wants everything in a modern way. According to him, the payment of bride price is archaic, is old-fashioned, it's uneducating at all. It's like you have gone to the market and used your money to buy a goat. So human beings are not goat according to Lakunle. They are human. So I cannot pay and take you away as if I've gone to the market to buy a goat. No, you are not a goat. So be my wife and let's go to the church. That is another modernity. The church wedding or the court wedding. So let's go there and get married. And apart from that, he told CD at the time not to carry a bucket of water on her head, that it is archaic, it is not good. And he even lectured CD that, look, if you carry a bucket of water on your head, very soon you are not going to have neck. Your head will be cut off or it will go down. So trying to teach modernity. Apart from that, he even said that in modern period, people don't eat with fingers and hands any longer. What do? You take fork and knife to eat. You allow a machine to pound your yam. CD believe that as a traditional woman, a woman has to cook, he has to pound, he has to fetch water. But CD said, Lakunle said, no, that is old. It's an old idea. We must be able to use modern things to prepare food. We must use blender. We have to use forks and knife. We have to use a machine that will pound yam so that they will not go into your eyes. So these are people who represent, and you have to mention all those things. Make reference to the text. If you don't make reference to the text and you are just discussing generally, there is no mark. You are not going to impress the examiner. The examiner wanted to impress him more by discussing and making references to the textbook. So at the end of the day, you also discover that tradition, actually suppress modernity at the end of the day. So let's go to the next question, and which is from Wole Soyinka, the Lion and the Jewel. Discuss the significance of the use of play within a play. So play within a play technique. That is one of the features of a good drama. So there is a play within a play, and that kind of play was not common because there was no word. So it's just a play that uses body. You use your body, you use everything you have. But before then, I believe you are enjoying this class. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, make sure you like, share, and ensure you leave your comments. So, like I was saying, there's a play within a play. And Lakunle played a role of the man that came from Lagos. We also discovered that some women also play some roles there. And this kind of play in literature, we call it mime, M-I-M-E. It's a kind of play where you use your body. There's no speech there. The only thing you can hear, especially in a modern period, you can use drum. There could be drum set, to spoil action. So that is a play, but you must discuss them in depth. You discuss them in detail to be able to get a good mark. If you want to earn a good mark, you must tell us what actually precipitated that kind of play within the play. What prompted it? And what prompted it is the picture of a city that came from Lagos. And that picture display city all over. the magazines. You see the front page, the middle page, and all over everywhere. And see the thought, yes, I am beautiful. I'm very important. And I'm the most beautiful girl in the village. And he began to go around. He said, okay, we are going to act that play. And that is the play that was displayed was as a result of the stranger that came from Lagos and brought a camera to begin to snap the picture of BC before it turned into a magazine. So in that case, you discover that BC was really excited. So they had to force Lakule to act that play. So it's a play within the play. So can we move on to the next question? All right, this is the non-African drama. And the first one is John Osborne, Look Back in Anger. Look Back in Anger. The question is, consider Jimmy's views about the Victorian society of his time. And the Victorian society of his time, that is in England then, was that, he talked about the class, this class in those days. So there are two major classes, the first class and the working class. So, and some people belong to the working class and they continue to serve. And if you are a working class, you cannot go to the top class, the first class. Those who are in the first class, the rich, the aristocrats, the landowners, the wealthy people, they allow their children to marry within their group. They will not allow their children to go and marry from the working class. It has to be, you have to be up there. And this is exactly what Jimmy is trying to bring out there. And he was annoyed, very, very annoyed based on what was happening in society. How can you be a graduate without getting a job? You are a graduate. The only thing you can do is to be selling sweet because society. He was annoyed because of society. The society at that time, they don't recognize anybody who is not from the upper class. You must be from the upper class before you can be recognized. You must, if you're a politician, you must be from the upper class. A poor person cannot, contest and win election. So it has to be from that class. And that's why Jimmy was very annoyed. So his view about the current society is that of, discrimination, class structure, discrimination society. Some people are enjoying, others are suffering. So want to discuss it, you also bring out other characters that are involved. You bring them one after the other, the wife of Jimmy and others, his friends, you bring them, all of them are in the same class. But some are also in the upper class. So you make sure you refer to those characters. So the next question is your comment on Alice's reaction to Jimmy's attack on her family. Alison is the wife of Jimmy. And Jimmy has always attacked the family of her wife. The reason was that the family is a rich family, wealthy family, upper class family. So and Jimmy from the working class, the lowest class of the society. And Jimmy married from that high class society, the first class, the upper class society. So, and each time he's not happy, trying to express his anger, disappointment, his frustration, and the wife is always there. So he begin to bombard the family of Alison. Alison was not happy about it, but there is nothing he could do. So look at her reaction. And most of the time that he's trying to defend, the husband will not allow her to defend anything at all. So there's always quarrel between them. So the other one is trying to express, its outburst based on the frustration, he's facing society. Why the other one does not see any love between her and her husband? There's no love at all. And it's very evident just because of the society. The society has made them to become, enemy of each other. They are supposed to be, come lovers. But in this case, it's like a cat and dog living together in the same family. So look at those things. The reaction of Harlison to Jimmy's attack. So you must discuss them in details to be able to get good mark. You should be able to refer to each of those things, one after the other. You refer to them, mention some of the character, the settings that are involved. Okay, let's move on to the next question. August Wilson Fences, a non-African drama. How does Troy's upbringing influence his relationship with his children? So, before you can answer this question too, you must familiarize yourself with the goings in the play. And let's look at one important character there, and that's Troy. You should be able to look at his character. Who is Troy? You look at the background, and before you now come back to his family, he has his children and his wife. Let's look at two ways, two sides to the question. Look at his role positively, his behavior, his relationship, towards his children, based on his background, based on his upbringing. Then apart from that, you also look at the negative aspect. So you must be able to compare the two before you can answer the question very well. You look at it from different angles, then you now conclude your opinion. At the conclusion, you conclude by bringing out, you criticize. Tell us your opinion. What do you feel about that relationship based on the upbringing of Troy? So the next question is, to what extent does Gabriel provide comic relief in the play? Look at Gabriel as a very comical man. So first you look at the character of Gabriel. Who is Gabriel? Then, who are those connected with Gabriel? Look at the background. You tell us things about Gabriel. Then you now talk about his comic character, how he has been able to provide comic relief. When we normally use comic relief most of the time is used in a tragic play. Things that will have been degenerated, things that will have become so negative. By the time it comes up to talk or to discuss something, everybody will laugh and it will cool down tension. You look at that role of Gabriel there in that case, in that manner, then you write everything. You must be able to tell us to what extent in the play. You bring them out one after the other, here, there. If you can mention about 2 or 3 cases where he's able to demonstrate that trait as a comic character to bring a relief to the play, you must be able to tell us one after. Don't just write about character of Gabriel without telling us the role he played to ensure there's comic relief in the play. So you should be able to tell us those areas. Tell us the references. Make references to that. Then you score a very good mark. Then you don't forget to write very good English. You must be able to tell us paragraph by paragraph, every paragraph, a point. Make sure you develop your point very well and write voluminously. Not just nonsense, but you must write to answer the question. And you're going to have a very good point. So let's look at the next question, and which is African poetry. So the African poetry, some of you are familiar with all the texts. You should be able to read very well to understand, some of the events. Particularly, you must understand the background. You must understand the themes of all the poems. Then you must be able to tell us some of those devices that have been used there. And the mood, don't forget the mood. What kind of mood do you see there? What is the mood of the writer? And what is the tone? You know, how is he portraying that poem? Before you can answer your question. So let's look at the first question. How effective is the use of contrast in song of women of my land? So the question specifically say the use of contrast. Contrast is you compare two things. But before then, you have to provide a background. What is the poem talking about? The song of women of my land. It's like a dirge, wailing, crying. They are not comfortable. They are cheated. They are the lower ebb, the background of women generally in Africa. Then you now talk about the use of contrast. Contrast is the opposite. So good, bad, negative, positive. You look at them one by one. See how the poet has been able to use contrast to achieve a goal or to achieve a purpose in a poem. So if you're able to do this, you must be able to tell us about at least three points. Contrast, at least 3 points to be able to earn a credit mark. So the next question is examine the same African poem. The same African poem. Examine the leader and the led as a criticism of leadership in Africa. This leader and the led was written by NECO or NABTEB. So you have to examine a particular theme there. So criticism of leadership in Africa, is it true? Some people are more, they want to suppress others. And when you look at it, the poet was actually using animal to criticize or to satirize the African leaders. He was trying to correct. He's trying to satirize what is going on in Africa. Leadership crisis in Africa. Leadership imbalance, unfair, a kind of lack of fairness in the leadership of Africa. So you have to examine the poem critically. Is it a criticism? Actually, is this a criticism of leadership in Africa? Some seems to be greater than the other. So some want to suppress. Some want their voice to be heard. And some, the followers too, they are just following. And they cannot say anything to correct the leader. When leaders are wrong, they are also wrong. And this is exactly what the poet is trying to say. He's criticizing the leadership style of Africa. They are there permanently. They don't want to leave the system. They want to rule for life. Although we are not going to talk generally, but we are going to restrict ourselves to the what the poem actually is saying. This is a general comment actually, but you must make reference to the poem. As you are saying something that is happening in Africa, really, that is true. But you must refer to the poem. If you don't refer to the poem, and we are just making general comment about African leadership, you are correct, but you will score good mark. You are going to score low mark because it's a general comment. But when you refer to the poem, mention some lines, get some quotation from the poem, then you score an excellent mark. Can we move to the next question? How effective is the use of contrast in the song? Okay, we have seen that. Can we go to, yes, this is non-African poem. Consider the mood of the persona in the good moral. This is exactly what I'm saying. What is the mood? The title of the poem is Good Moral. Is there anything good there? So let's look at the mood. And when you talk about the mood, you talk about the feelings of the poet. What is his feeling? Is he in a good mood? Is he in the right mood? Is he annoyed? Is he anger? Is he pessimism? Is he negative? Is it bad mood? Is he a joyful mood or happy mood? So is he a sober mood? So you are going to look at it. You consider such mood. But you don't just stop there. You have to tell us, you know, how that mood affected the themes, or it affected the theme of the poem. So you mention some of those things related with the mood of the poet. So when you do that, you have a very excellent man. Not just writing one sentence or two sentences and think that you have answered. The mood of this is this. No, it is not so. You have to discuss it in depth. So the last question there says, discuss the theme of regrets in the journey of the Magi. Discuss the theme of regrets in the journey of the Magi. This is a very classical poem. The poem is very interesting. So it's just one theme of regret. When you look at the poem, you will find out that the Magi, they started a particular journey. They are going to where a bat, somebody's bat, somebody gave birth to a baby. So they wanted to go and see the bat. And along the line, through the journey, they met a lot of challenges. It was a time of cold, or we can say harmattan, very cold weather, very severe one. They thought of going back. They regretted that if they knew, they would have turned. They wouldn't have been back on this journey. But it's a journey they cannot turn back any longer because they are already halfway to the journey. And apart from that, the snow was much. So the camels that was taking them to the place of birth was galloping and melting. So they could not run. They could not walk very well. And even the camel too, they experienced some harm. They were harmed. And so their legs were paining them. And blood were coming out of their legs. And they could not move very well. Apart from that, several obstacles you have to mention the embark that resulted into the theme of regret. You have to mention them. A lot of problems. They did not have food to eat on the way. No food. And the village where they got to, they have to sleep over so that they could continue their journey the next day. Discovered that the city were hostile. They were unfriendly. And apart from that, they were even taking their women from them. They were chasing them away. They did not have food to eat. They did not sell them food. They were very oppressive to them. And they were treating them like inhuman. They were giving them inhuman treatment. So those experiences caused them to regret that journey. So apart from that, they also met so many obstacles on the way too, that many of them thought, you know, they could no longer, they shouldn't, I mean, they would have loved not to continue the journey based on some of the problems they encounter, you know, in the course of the journey. Then, finally, they were able to make it. They were regretting just because of those obstacles, one after the other. You have to mention them, those obstacles, mention them one by one. You can also make reference by quoting, if you can quote. Even if you cannot put line 2, line 3 there, it doesn't really matter. But if you can put it there, it does. It's under examination. You may not be able to remember those lines, but you can put it there. So all those problems, one after the other, they encounter on the way, you mention them. Then, and that is the reason for their regret. But at the end of the day, finally, they were able to get to the bat, to the dead. The bat they went to see, they saw the bat. But they also said, this is our own bat. I mean, this is our own death. So, in fact, they say, we would love to embark upon this journey once more time. So, because they overcame those obstacles along the way. So, at the end of the day, they got to their destination. They saw the bat, and they also saw their own death too. So, the theme of regret cannot be overlooked in the poem because the Magi encounter a lot of obstacles in the course of going on their journey. I hope you've been able to gain one thing or the other in the course of our discussion, how you can answer questions on literature in English, either you are writing Waec, NECO or NABTEB. I believe we have gained one thing or the other. But don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Ensure you like, you share, and leave a message, leave a comment. Thank you very much.